And places like the library package them up into really amazing community and family-oriented programs.
That's why they're so important.
Yeah, they're so important.
Funding is so important.
Funding is, well, funding makes the world go round.
Hola, hola. Welcome back to Café con Pam. I have to tell you something before we started this conversation. When Patrick Stewart was a kid growing up in Phoenix, his dad bought him a CB radio for a family road trip. You know, the kind truckers use. If you're too young, the kind truckers use. And his dad made everyone in the car pick a handle, a nickname, a road name. Patrick picked Easy Reader. He was a little kid who read everything all the time, and the name he chose for himself, Easy Reader. And now he runs the Library Foundation of San Diego, fighting every single day to keep 37 library branches open, funded, and accessible to every single person in the city. He spent 9 years before that at Worlds Alive, putting books into the hands of kids in communities that have been historically underinvested. Kids who don't have 9 million words of Head Start that their upper income peers do as they walk into kindergarten. It is actually a real statistic, and we talk about it in this episode. Patrick también is navigating something that is super wild when you think about it. San Diego's libraries are so underfunded that the security budget is larger than the books budget. And in the middle of federal funding cuts, city budget fights, and a structural deficit that keeps pushing libraries to the bottom of the priority list, Patrick and the Library Foundation did something pretty audacious. They took the old Mission Hills Library branch, the one that had been sitting empty since 2019, and actually turned it into a beautiful bookstore. A community-rooted banned books proudly on the shelf independent bookstore, the Library Shop Mission Hills, where every single purchase goes back to supporting all 37 branches. They opened a bookstore to save the library. Well, to think about, right? In this episodio, you're going to hear how libraries are fighting for survival at every level, federal, state, and city, and what actually means to do that for communities like ours. We talk about what gets lost when libraries lose hours, lose funding, lose space, lose people, and it's more than books. You're going to hear why this man who could have done anything chose this fight and has been choosing it every single day. So, if you've ever used a library as a quiet place when home wasn't quiet, if you've ever watched a program get cut from a community that already had so little, or if you've ever wondered what you actually can do to protect the spaces that belong to all of us, este episodio es para ti. Bueno, sin más, here's my conversation con Patrick Stewart. So Patrick, now, to bring it a little bit to you, you grew up in Arizona and you grew up going to library summer camp. Or like the summer program.
I grew up participating in our local Phoenix Public Library branch. It was called Palo Verde. And they had the summer reading program, and you got all of the, you got little certificates and all this sort of thing. And I was just like an absolutely voracious reader. I read all the time. And so I participated in all of those. My parents, our extended family lives back east. And so when we were growing up, we would sometimes take these road trips back east and go visit the grandparents and all that sort of thing. And my father, for kicks and giggles, one year, bought a CB radio, like the truckers used to use. And he made us all pick handles, and my handle was Easy Reader.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So, and that came out of doing the summer reading. Yeah.
So knowing how that summer reading program influenced you as a kid and doing your work, is it a full circle moment to the work that you do now? Yeah,
it really is. Like my undergraduate degree is in philosophy of literature. My wife's an author. Prior to this,
around you.
Yeah, it's surrounded. Prior to this job, I was running a literacy foundation, and it really is. I think and I was talking about this with somebody. I think maybe yesterday or the day before that there is. I was talking with somebody on Tuesday there's something about libraries, and especially when you're like on the inside, right? I'm not a librarian, not a library worker. I get to this joy of supporting the library. But when you're inside it and you really peel apart all the layers, you realize that libraries literally do intersect with every aspect of our lives, right? Science and technology and humanities and economics and early childhood and education and college prep and seniors and arts and culture. I mean, it like literally intersects with every aspect of our lives. And I think to me, that's, it goes so far beyond just reading and books, which I love and find very important. But, once you're in it, you see the magic and you're hooked. And so, it's full circle for me. And this is getting a chance to support the library system and, work with folks like me around the country to support libraries and library concepts is really a great part of my day.
For sure.
Yeah.
So something that I read is that in San Diego, half of kids can't read on grade level by the end of third grade.
Yeah. About 48%, depending on which thing. But yes, roughly half young people in San Diego are not reading at grade level by third grade.
And what I see is that the number jumps to 2/3 in Black and brown communities.
Yes.
And so you spent 9 years at Words Alive?
Yeah.
And so you got to see firsthand supporting people. And now that you're on the other side of the equation of the library and the funding, and how do your words collide now, knowing that you have that background?
So it gives me obviously greater insight to what the problem is and the variety of ways that problem is being addressed by either community-based organizations, school system, libraries. The thing that's tough. And the library, the San Diego Public Library, for a while ran our region's campaign for grade level reading. And that was a coordinated effort to bring folks like United Way and other community-based organizations together and try to figure out how we're going to ensure that kids are reading at grade level by third grade. It's an important marker. There's a phrase, how does it go? Up to third grade, you've been learning to read. After third grade, you're reading to learn. Right? So then you start, you got textbooks and like heavy concepts and, if you're not reading functionally well, you're not going to open up a biology textbook and understand it and connect with what's being delivered. And so, I think it's important. One of the things, we think about things like the summer reading program. We think about things like Campaign for Grade Level Reading. These kinds of programs, 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, these programs that libraries run for communities, they're data backed, they're science backed, right? So we know what happens when you're not reading by grade level at third grade, at the end of third grade. We know that largely in Black and brown communities and low income communities, kids are underprepared for the beginning of kindergarten, right? And then we also know, and these are all studied, American Academy of Pediatrics and others, we know that regardless of community, regardless of demographics or parents' education or what have you, lower and middle income kids prior to kindergarten hear like 9 million fewer words than their upper income counterparts.
Wow.
And these are words, not words like, brush your teeth, don't hit your sister, go to bed, things like that. Words that help shape your relationship to the world around you. Words generally that come out of well-designed children's books, right?
Yeah.
So you start creating empathy, you start creating a relationship with the environment, you start understanding, dynamics of family, all these things. Just think of board books and picture books and things that kids are reading. So these programs that libraries run, on the surface, they're like cute, right? 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, and the family, they've got their we just had the celebration for it a couple weeks ago up here. They get their little certificate, or the summer reading program, right? To fight the summer slide. A lot of kids, if they don't have academic camp or academic programs, especially early on.
Yeah.
They lose what they've learned. We know this happens. They lose what they learn over the summer, and so in September, they're not prepared,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you get a summer reading program. We know what happens when kids are not reading at grade level by third grade. They're not being taught how to read after that. That indicator that we were just talking about generally also translates. They test again about 11th grade, and you don't get any better, and it leads to dropping out of school. It leads to not going to school after you do graduate. So these are all science-based indicators of how we can help young people progress, and places like the library package them up into really amazing community and family-oriented programs.
That's why they're so important.
Yeah, they're so important.
Funding is so important.
Funding makes the world go round.
So, speaking of funding, now in your role, libraries are threatened in so many levels.
Yeah.
Federal funding, state, and even the city funding.
Yeah.
How do you navigate all of the layers?
So here in San Diego, the largest proportion of money that the San Diego Public Library gets is from the city's general fund. So sort of where the city's general fund goes is where libraries, parks, arts and culture, rec centers, that kind of thing goes. Yeah. And so that's been a challenge, as we all know. We've been talking about the city budget for the last couple of years. We're dealing with some pretty large structural deficits and trying to find ways that we're bringing more money into the city so that we can support these things. So that has...
San Diego has underfunded for a long time.
San Diego's been underfunded for a long time, and proportionate. We're one of the largest urban public library systems, and proportionate to our friends around the country, we're woefully underfunded. But then you also...
Why is that?
We just haven't made those investments. We haven't prioritized making those investments. 25 years ago, the City Council created a program called Library. It's an ordinance, a city ordinance, where the library is supposed to be funded at 6% of what the general fund is. That funding has never been more than like 3.2%, right? So it's always, every year, there's something else that's taking priority, and don't worry, libraries will get to you next year. Don't worry, libraries will get to you next year. And the last couple of years, it's like, libraries, we got to cut you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The state feels the same way. The state budget kind of feels the same way, but the library here doesn't rely on the state budget for operations. The money that the library gets at the state level very often will support renovations, new buildings, large capital projects, things like that. And then federal funding, which is distributed to states, and then the states distribute them outward. Federal funding will help support things like supporting libraries, particularly in rural areas, and libraries in indigenous spaces. It will support particular programs, things like ESL programs, lunch at the library programs, support the Braille Library, things that we all tap into, and resources that we'll be able to tap into to serve a particular part of our community.
Yeah.
So federal funding going away or being diminished, or being assigned right now, being assigned to, quote, priorities that the administration finds acceptable.
Wow.
And there's language that literally says that. So
not
do
teaching
you
kids
think
how to read.
ESL is going to be important? No, absolutely not. So that funding being distributed to states goes away. Funding at the state level not being available means you're not also maintaining some of your spaces. And keeping up your spaces in a way that the community, can access them. And then at the local level, programs, staffing, books on the shelves, things like that.
It's so wild because I work with a lot of Latinas, for example, and they often talk about library programs that they attended, and how even then, them going through those programs, when they get to college, they still feel behind. And so imagine if libraries fully go away, what's going to happen to those kids?
Yeah.
What can people do about it?
So, one of the things it can do is be vocal. tell your story and be honest and vulnerable and open about like the way that libraries and public spaces change your life, the way that rec centers, after school programs change your life.
Third spaces.
There are third spaces, and they're important spaces. And I think so. That's one. Two, I think this is a political issue, right? We talk about there's only so many dollars. I get that there's only so many dollars. I may say something now that will rub people the wrong way, but I think we overinvest in policing and we underinvest in the things that will ultimately, a generation later, will not require the kind of acute militarized policing that we're investing in today.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a priority issue, it's a political issue, and I think we need to make room for people to tell those stories and make those voices heard, and advocate as hard as you can for things like this. There was a budget proposal. Might have been last year. Last year got draconian for a minute. Like they kind of picked it back up a little bit later, but the early part of the budget process, April-ish, there was a proposal to like eliminate the hours in most of the rec centers in most of the communities south of the 8.
Wow.
Make that make sense. Now, granted, they backed that up, right? They backpedaled. That what didn't happen, but and then you're
was there any
investing
justification?
Additional money. It was trying to save money, but then you're investing additional money into police. And I don't know, you've been a teenager, I've been a teenager. When I was a teenager, you give me a bunch of unstructured time, no rec centers that were free. There's no telling what could happen, right? And then, of course, then the police come in, and now we're arresting kids for shenanigans that probably wouldn't need to happen if rec centers were open, And these are the kinds of things. I think we have a political issue, we have an economic issue, and we have a prioritization issue. And we're never going to be as rich as we want to be. That's fine. But we need to be politically strong enough to, frankly, reset some priorities. My 2 cents. Not everybody's going to like that, but
I know.
But I mean, that's the way it is, right?
Well, and it's important because these are programs that help a lot of people.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
And so now let's talk about the store, the library shop in Mission Hills. Mm-hmm. So something that I was thinking about is you basically had to open a store to sell books so the libraries can survive.
That's a funny way of putting it, right? It does more than just selling books so that, proceeds come to the Library Foundation and we're able to do more with the money that we're getting and we're able to support the library more, because we're going to need to be supporting the library more.
Yeah. It
also, though, creates another level of engagement with community, with authors, with local authors, mm-hmm. With families, and it creates an opportunity for the Library Foundation to be able to tell its story, why are libraries important, advocate for libraries, bring people in, and ensure that our story is being told in another venue, in another space. It's the old, and we built out the old Mission Hills Library,
yeah.
which has been sitting vacant since January 2019. So there was some work to do. But how cool is that, right? So it's also the Library Foundation taking over the old abandoned library in a community that's been like, come on, gang, figure out what to do with this space.
Yeah.
And how appropriate, and this is a community that doesn't have one of these spaces and is very, very supportive of libraries, understands the importance of libraries. And so it was a perfect opportunity. But yeah, it's kind of funny. You're like opening a bookstore to sell books to save the
library.
Kind of help the library, which provides books, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, a testament to San Diego and San Diegans. We love our arts and culture. We love connecting around the humanities and arts and culture and books and reading. And I think I can't remember if this is true or not, but for per capita, like we have one of the highest number of like book clubs.
No way.
Yeah, you and I have a book club or a formal one, or We have foundations that are starting book clubs,
That's
based
cool.
on their themes, right? So I mean, this is it makes sense,
Yeah,
which is kind
yeah.
of cool.
I saw a video of, I think it was the library on Washington, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that they provide, like, it's a tote bag for book clubs. So they provide like 10 books per
Oh,
bag.
that's cool.
And inside of it, they give you the laminated book guide
Right,
to
right,
run the
right.
book club for the whole book. And you basically can check out the whole bag for your book club. And
That
I
is
know.
brilliant.
And so then,
I love it.
whoever is responsible for checking out the books, they'll just bring them back. And,
Right.
which is, I was like, that's pretty brilliant because it limits you on time. It's
Steal
like,
that.
I know, you should.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, what we're doing at Mission Hills is we're creating a whole shelf for book clubs. So and connecting with your book club. So your book club can meet there. We'll figure out if you can bring the wine or not. But your book
Yes.
club can meet there. You can also, what we're doing is we're connecting with many book clubs. And so you can order your books from us at a discount, which is great for your book
Nice.
club members. And then we're going to have copies of what all the different book clubs are reading, up there. And so like you can come in and be like, I'm a book club. What should we
Yeah.
be doing next? And it's like, oh, so-and-so's book club is doing ABC, right?
Nice.
That's a great idea, and there's description of it and all that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
but I like the idea of the
You should do it.
checking the.
I'm gonna see if
the
I can
tote
find a
out.
video and send it to your team. If I don't find it, then. But it was literally, and it was a branded library tote,
Yeah.
like big
Yeah,
tote
yeah.
bag. And so you take it, you run your club, and you bring it back.
Right,
the
right,
same,
right.
just like with the books read. And it's like cookie cutter. Like
That
there's no
is
excuse
brilliant.
not to do it.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love that idea.
So Patrick, what would you say for the people that are like, all right, we understand libraries are important. We understand, like, we need to get involved, read banned books, all the things. If they were to do 3 steps to save the libraries because they're at risk, what would you tell them to do?
Economics is the most important thing. Funding, that's obviously the most important thing. Second, I think, which still requires money, is creating spaces that meet community needs. So, for example, we have 37 branches, including Central here. And those are 37 very unique communities in very
Yes.
unique neighborhoods that have very different needs. And being able to invest in how to maintain a space so that it's meeting community needs on a regular basis, I think is super important, right? I tell stories sometimes about, where was it? One of the small branches in University City. Okay, there's 2 of them up there, and I don't remember which one it was, but it was super small. It is super small. And I made the mistake of going up there at like 3:30 in the afternoon, and there's like 2 elementary schools right around it, UC High School and Stanley Middle School is right near it. And there are kids sprawled out on the grass. You walk in the library, there's like just a handful of computers in the middle of the library. And there are kids like 4 or 5 deep waiting to use the computer so they can do their homework. They're sprawled out in stacks. You're like walking over children. It's super loud in there because it's like they're middle schoolers, right?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to walk in and say, this is how this space is being used.
Yeah.
And how do we redesign this space so that, or combine spaces or something or another, get creative so that we're meeting the needs of the community. We, the Library Foundation, funded and sort of led the effort to create the new library master plan. And one of the things that we found is like, again, how differently communities use libraries. So there are some communities where we're still experiencing the digital divide.
Yeah.
I do believe that broadband should be a utility.
Yeah.
You get electricity, you get water, you get gas, you get internet.
Yes.
But till that day happens, a lot of these folks in those communities, they'll use libraries to use the digital assets, the computers, check out Wi-Fi, that kind of thing. Some other communities that may not be experiencing that, they will use communities for arts and culture, community meeting spaces, or you've got some communities where like they're checking out a lot of books, and others where they're checking out a lot of something else, right? So I think the second thing aside from just funding, creating opportunities so that the spaces more accurately reflect the communities that they serve. And then third, I think investing into library workers, right? You know, they're the ones, the smartest people in the room, I think. And they're keenly aware of how to serve their communities. Oftentimes they live in those communities. And there are opportunities, I think, to be doing more staff development and investing in library workers. We just don't do it often enough. And so I think investing in the spaces, but also investing in the people who are running those spaces and ensuring that they have the tools and resources that they need. I think those are the money, period, the space, and the people that run these programs.
Totally. Why would the old Mission Hills Library, why was it vacant for so long?
So we opened the new one.
Yeah.
So down the street.
So it's just a replacement?
Yeah, so and to upgrade it, and you know, the old one is what, 4,500 square feet. The new one's super cool, right? There wasn't. The city tried to figure out what to do with the space. They floated a few ideas through. It's an old building. They thought about childcare, for example, but that would have required sort of a different thing. They thought about, you know, some sort of resource on the ground floor and then going up for housing, but that would have required, I mean, you should just tear the whole building down at that point. They thought about homeless services, and the community was like, I mean, you're in Midtown, there's already, I mean, there's a need for it, but the community is like, come on, you know. And so we just sort of like watched each one of these things get voted down, and Misty Jones, our library director, and I just made a pitch to the city and said,
keep it in the books.
So,
nice. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. This has been great.
Yay.
Bueno, esa fue mi entrevista with Patrick Stewart, and I'm still thinking about el dinero, el espacio y la gente, money, space, and people. The three things he shared, and what I think about is how many times have we watched institutions, they care about communities like ours, and then cut the budget, shrink the hours, underinvest in people doing the work on the ground. Libraries are not abstract. They are the rec center that stays open so kids don't have nowhere to go. They're the computer lab for the student who doesn't have Wi-Fi at home. They're the room when someone who's been told their whole life that knowledge belongs to other people can walk in and say, no, it's mine too. They're the little office for someone to have a meeting. And what we are seeing, besides being a library funding issue, it's also, I think, a calladita culture issue. What happens when systems are built to leave certain communities out, and we accept it as normal because we are just grateful for what we have. And Patrick said something during our conversation that is kind of a lot. Like, it was a lot for me to soak it all in, which is that San Diego has an ordinance written 25 years ago that says libraries should be funded at 6% of the general fund. They've never once hit 3%. Not once. Y todavía, we act surprised when things are underfunded. So if this conversation moved you, por favor, compártela. Share with your tía who takes the kids to story time. Share with a friend who doesn't think libraries are for her anymore. Tag your author friend. And if you've ever used a library, well, there's a way to lend your voice. Send a postcard. Show up to a city council meeting in your location, because your voice is actually data and we can use it to make change. Y bueno, como siempre, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with me, for letting me in to your space with these conversations. Thank you so much. Y como siempre, stay shining.
Sabrosura pa' ti que